Hi, this is the worksheet for the Glomm Pastry brush set. This brush set includes one worksheet file, 25 brushes, one set of color palettes, and 8 berries clip art. If you're interested in this brush set, you can buy it at the link below. Let's get started. Open the worksheet and tap on the first layer group named 1 Basic to find this picture. First, we need to import the color palette by going to the folder where we saved the file and tapping on the palette Pastry Colors. It will automatically be imported into Procreate. Select Card here, as it shows the number of each color. When you import the palette, it will go to the bottom. Once you find it, click on the 3 dots icon and select Set as Default. We'll be using these 5 brushes for this picture. This is the brush size, and this is the color we'll be using. The blue line here is the guideline. In this set, there are 2 base brushes. We'll be drawing in the base layer. Use base brush 1, size 30%, and color 2, and draw along the blue line. As for this one on the right, use the base brush 2 to draw. The first base brush will have a smoother edge, while the second base brush will have a rougher edge. Next, we'll add texture. Go to the texture layer above and tap on a clipping mask to keep the texture within the base layer. Use the crispy texture brush, color 3, and paint it all around. Next, use the crack surface brush to add texture to the pastry on the right. These 2 brushes create a rough, cracked texture like this. Our pastries still look quite flat. Let's add some shadow to the shadow layer. Make the shadow layer a clipping mask. Use noise brush at 45% size and color number 5. Paint around the bottom part to make it look more round. Usually, the noise brush is used to draw shadows and textures. There are 2 types of noise brushes in this set. The first one is the regular noise brush, which increases the color intensity when overlaying. However, the color intensity will still be within the chosen color tone. The second type is the burn noise brush, which gradually darkens the color until it becomes almost black. Next, Group 2, Whipped Cream. The left image is the original. Open the subgroup Whipped Cream 1. We are using 2 brushes to draw the whipped cream. Use the base whipped cream brush first. Adjust the size and color according to the guide. Draw along the blue guidelines. Next, draw on the cream layer. Use the whipped cream brush with color number 0. Draw the whipped cream texture along the blue guidelines. Use low pressure at the beginning, increase the pressure in the middle, and end with low pressure at the tip of the whipped cream. Once finished, go back to the base layer. Use the base brush number 1 to clean up the base whipped cream, to make it look more natural. That's done. When finished, move on to Group 2, where we will draw ice cream. Open the Whipped Cream 2 group layer. Draw on the base layer as before. Use the whipped cream base brush with size 40% and color number 6. Draw an oval shape along the blue lines like this. The whipped cream you draw may not look exactly like the original, because this brush is designed to create a more freestyle drawing of whipped cream, unlike the stamp brushes. Now go to the cream layer. Use the whipped cream brush to draw the cream inside. Note that this brush has a pointed shape on both sides. When you draw, try to place the pointed end with the extended tips of the whipped cream base. First, try drawing a simple curved shape like this. Use low pressure on the edges and apply more pressure in the middle to make the cream bigger. Once you understand how it works, try drawing a slightly curved shape like this. It will look more natural. This may take some practice, but it will get easier. Once you have drawn the cream, go back to the base layer. For some areas that don't look natural, use the base brush number 1 to touch up the details. Next, draw the shadows. Use the paint and detail brush with the color number 7 to draw on the shadow layer. Paint lightly along the edge of the cream like this. Then use a soft brush to shade around the edges to make it look more dimensional. And that's done. For drawing whipped cream, the base color and whipped cream color should be in high contrast color. If you want a light colored whipped cream, use dark color for the base. But if we want a dark colored whipped cream, use a light base color. Next, the group 3, Flaky texture. These brushes create flaky pastry textures. Let's use these brushes to draw a croissant. Use the base brush number 2 to draw on the base layer. Go to the texture layer. Use the Flaky layers brush to lightly paint along the folds of the croissant, so you see where the folds are before hiding the guideline. Then, use a Flaky texture brush number 4 to lightly paint the texture on the same layer. Go back to use the Flaky layers brush again. Paint lightly to create the overall texture. Don't use too much pressure. The Flaky texture and the Flaky layers brushes have slightly different uses. The Flaky texture brush is generally used to draw textures, while the Flaky layers brush is similar to the noise brush burn, where the color intensity increases gradually with each stroke, making it great for drawing layered and overlapping puff edges. Let's go back to the croissant. For the shadow layer, use the noise burn brush to add more depth to the edges. Then, go to the highlight layer. Use the highlight brush with the color number 0 to lightly add some strokes in the center of the croissant. There are 2 highlight brushes in this set with different densities, so use whichever you prefer. Next, let's draw some bread together in group 4. Open the group layer bread 1 and select the base layer. Use the base brush number 2 to draw along the blue line. Use the bread texture brush number 2. Paint lightly on the texture layer. Once finished, go back to the base layer and duplicate it. Rename the duplicated layer to base 2, and move it to the blue line to make it the bread crust. Fill it with the color number 2. Touch up some details by following the guideline. Create a new layer on top of the bread crust layer. Make it a clipping mask layer. Change the mode to multiply, and rename it Texture 2. Use the noise brush with a size of 50% and color number 4 to apply the texture all over the bread crust. Then, reduce the brush size and paint around the edges and curves. That's it. The next group layer, bread 2, this one is easy. This brush is for painting air bubbles in bread like sourdough with large, dispersed air bubbles. Paint on the bread surface. If you apply light pressure, the air bubbles will be small, but if you apply heavy pressure, the air bubbles will expand and become bigger. When drawing, use a combination of light and heavy pressure to make the air bubbles look more natural. But just avoid overlapping strokes like this. The next group is group 5, grain texture. There are 3 brushes in total, all of which create a sand-like texture. There are a total of 6 pastries here, each with a label number. When drawing, draw on the layer with the same number as the pastry. Starting with pastry number 1 on layer number 1. Use the sharp edge brush with a size of 10% and color number 4. Draw 3 simple straight lines. One side of this brush is sand-like and the other is sharp, making it good for drawing things like churros or pastries with sharp edges. Next is pastry number 2, eclair. Use the same brush and color. Draw along the blue arrow line. The brush creates a grainy edge like this. The third pastry is a jam roll. Use one side grain brush, size 15%, color number 3. Draw along the blue line. This brush is grainy on one side and opaque on the other side. Next, the fourth pastry. Use the same brush and color, but adjust the size to 20%. Draw along the blue lines and curve them towards the edges. When finished, adjust the brush size down to 10%. Paint a few strokes to create fold layers for the bread. It is good for drawing twisted bread like this. Next, the roll brush. Draw these 2 pasties on layers 5 and 6 here. This brush creates a 5-layered grainy texture that is good for drawing palmier cookies. Then, switch to color number 4 and draw a texture on the 6th one. It creates flaky multi-layers, which is good for Danish pastry or twisted bread. That's all for the 6 pastries. Note that some texture brushes can be enlarged. If you are working on a big drawing but find that the texture brush is too small, even if you already adjust the size to the biggest, you can tap on the brush. Go to Properties. At the menu maximum size, you can slide to the right to make the brush bigger. Now you have the bigger texture that fits better. Next up, the group 6, we will be drawing a pie. Open the pie group layer. Go to the pie weave layer. Use the pie weave brush to simply fill the pie area. You can adjust the size of the pattern by tapping on the brush. Select grain and adjust the scale bar to make it smaller or larger. Next, let's draw the edge of the pie. Select the pie edge base layer. We will use 2 brushes like when we draw the whipped cream. Use the pie edge base brush to draw around the pie. Select the pie edge layer. Use the pie edge brush to draw inside. That's done. Let's move on to the pastry on the right. Actually, you can also use the pie edge brush to draw cream. This round base is a tart crust. As it is already dark, we don't need to draw a base layer. Use the pie edge brush to draw along the blue lines on the same name layer. Now let's add some strawberries. Open the PNG clip art file in the set and place the strawberries. Use the base brush number 1 to draw a leaf to make it look fresh. Then create a new layer under the strawberry. Set it to multiply. Use the soft brush number 2 to draw some shadows. The soft brush is usually used to draw shadows similar to a noise brush, but without the grainy texture. The next group is group number 7, sprinkle. This one is easy. I have drawn 3 pieces of bread for you. Use the multicolor sprinkle brush to spread it all over the donut. Erase the excess. Next, use the grains brush in color number 1 to draw grains scattered on the bread. Then, use the color number 5 to draw again to make it look like a mixture of 2 grains. For this brush, you can adjust the thickness as you like. Click on the brush. In the top menu stroke path, adjust the spacing to make it thicker or thinner as you like. The last brush is the icing brush. Use the icing brush to draw icing powder on the cream. You can also adjust the thickness using the same method. That's done. The final group is group number 8, mix usage. Actually, all of these brushes are not always fixed to be used, as we have learnt. You can mix and match them as you like. For example, some texture brushes can be used to draw shadows. This group has 5 pastries. When drawing, you can draw according to the numbers on the layer. Pastry number 1, crispy texture, can be used not only to draw texture but also to create shadows with rough texture effectively. Next, pastry number 2, flaky layers, can be used to draw textures that resemble tree bark or hard nut shells. For pastry number 3, draw on the same layer first. Bread texture is another brush that is good for drawing both shadows and icing. Use a 15% brush size and color number 4 to shade the bottom. Then, use the same brush at 20% and color number 0. Switch to draw on layers 3, 4, and 5. Draw the icing on top. Pastry number 4, air bubbles, can be used not only to draw bubbles but also to create chopped almonds texture for the pastry. Lastly, for the one-side grains brush, draw it in the round direction like this. It gives an effect similar to glazed sugar jelly candy. That's it for the Glomm pastry brush practice. I hope this brush set will help you create beautiful artwork. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.